Hello again everybody, and very warm welcome back to the LVFR YouTube channel. Today we are taking a look at descent, approach and landing in the LVFR A330-neo, released recently for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Hit like and subscribe while you're here, and any tips and tricks, share them down below in the comments naturally. Now, we are almost at Mombasa after a long flight from Frankfurt, following on from our previous tutorial video, and we're almost at top of descent. What's next then when we're thinking about the arrival? Well, we have to think about the STAR, the arrival procedure at the airport that we're flying to, in this case Mombasa. We have to look at the weather as well, the charts, make sure we've planned for a missed approach and we understand the missed approach procedure using the charts, and that we have everything set in the MCDU correctly and we've checked, cross-checked the data to make sure it is all accurate as well. Now we're going to be arriving into Mombasa. We're going to be flying an ILS approach for runway 21, and as before, taxiing out of Frankfurt, we're going to use Navigraph to display the charts and discuss all of these things that we need to consider. Throughout the journey, whilst we've been in cruise, we've stepped up some flight levels, we've stepped down some flight levels to make sure we're still nice and efficient with the fuel throughout the entirety of the journey. So you join me now as we've settled in at flight level 370 and we're inbound Devogo in 40 miles. The little arrow there suggests that we are very close to top of descent. So it's a bit difficult because of the way that the weather is, well, the sun is kind of reflecting against this, but we can go ahead and request the METAR, and you can see here 140 at 9. All the 9s means good visibility, few clouds 2,600 feet cumulonimbus, scattered cloud 27,000 feet, temperatures 30 degrees Celsius, QNH 1008. Now we're going to turn our attention to the MCDU and Navigraph. So it's been a huge journey, vectoring, routing all the way across Europe and then down the east side of Africa. And we are now currently after Ibrom towards Ivogo. You can see on the left here that we are planning for the IBNOC 3 Alpha arrival, IBNOC transition, ILS runway 21, Mombasa 2 transition for that. And we can look at the charts, and we see there IBNOC 51.3 miles to Imgal at or above flight level 60, ESPOM at or above flight level 40, and then there's nothing, because it then leads on to the final approach. This is where charts are really important, folks. You can get some free. Chartfox.org is one location you might find some charts, if not Google. Otherwise pay for a Navigraph subscription to get a really nice uniform Jefferson standard across those. From ESPOM we're going to route in basically for a direct approach, inbound 210 degrees track. We have to make sure the ILS frequency is tuned, and then we're going to make our approach to the runway here. Our minimums for the ILS, just Cat 1, we'll go for Barrow 400. And you can see as well the transition level on the charts. That's why the charts are really helpful. Flight level 30 and the airport elevation 200. That big box there shows you the missed approach procedure. That dashed line on the charts, what to do if we do abort the approach and go around. And what we're going to do now is get all of this put into the aircraft. So, destination HKMO, arrival ILS 21. IBNO 3 Alpha, we're replicating everything on the Navigraph charts, and the approach is via ESPOM, which is there. Once we're happy with that, we're going to insert the data, and then it's input into the MCDU for us. So we need to go through and make sure that all of this is correct. So we're going to carry from IBNOC on the charts, we can see that on the MCDU there. Imgal at 6,000 at or above, that's that one there. ESPOM flight level 40 as well, that's correct. So on and so forth. We look at the RadNav page and we look at the ILS charts. 110.1, ILS 21, and the course 209. So actually the course is off ever so slightly by 1 degree. Sometimes that's fine. We've got a default airport scenery to arrive at. Therefore we'll just go with whatever the sim is suggesting for us. There is a VOR here, MOVX, and we can tune that if we wish, 112.3. And what that will do is assist us with our decision making on the final approach, and we can put a course of 210 there if we want to as well. We need to look at the approach page, but before that we've just brushed past our top of descent, and therefore we're going to set our altitude on the FCU up here to match the first constraint, which was IMGAL at or above flight level 60. So I'm going to set 60, and I'm going to go into open descent, and I'm going to press vertical speed and start to rotate it now gently down to about 1800 foot per minute, and we're going to assess whether or not our descent rate is suitable enough. This currently doesn't have a custom LNAV or custom VNAV, so whilst you could use open descent and have a maximum descent performance on idle to get down, what you will find is by using vertical speed you'll be able to kind of control this in a bit more of a smoother manner, and that will help you then control your descent neatly to meet any relevant constraints. So we'll try 2500 foot per minute. We'll just slowly extend that to make sure that we can descend smoothly. We don't want a violent descent, a quick sudden change of pitch, because that won't be very comfortable. So you can see here on the enunciators of the primary flight display at the top, no decision height. Let's continue with our arrival planning now. Back to the charts. We discussed it earlier, didn't we? It's 400, so 400, and we're going to put that into MDA. And then if we get rid of the charts, we can look at our weather data, HKMO, QNH 1008. Winds 140 at 9. Temperature 30 degrees Celsius. And that's it, done. The next page is a go around page. You can amend this if you want to. So if you go around, what it will do is it will look to reduce your thrust like it would after takeoff at 1,490 feet. You can change that to a 1,000 feet above ground level if you want to. We'll just leave that set as default for now. And we will continue down with our smooth descent. Now you'll notice here, sometimes if you've got a bit of a steep descent like we have at the moment, to demonstrate this, the speed with the engines on idle begins to creep up and creep away. Now you can either reduce the rate of descent to a much better figure, or you can manage the energy by extending the ground spoilers to about half. They won't deploy more than half usually in an Airbus anyway. There are two options there for you to choose from for that. And it's very much dependent on the circumstance. You might find that actually both will work well for you with different weather conditions. So try both. As always, we need to think about transition level and transition altitude. So as we descend, we know the QNH is 1008. Let's go ahead and tune this accordingly, so it's ready. But we're not yet at the transition level, so once we've tuned it, we'll go back into standard pressure for now. You'll also notice there's no bottom of descent marker here, so we're very much looking and assessing on our rate of descent throughout the journey. You're looking around 80 miles approximately to get to about 8,000 feet from 37,000 feet, roughly. Depends on tailwinds, of course, as well, and your speed. So if we look at the runway charts, and we're making an approach onto 2-1 here, runway 2-1 at Mombasa, 3,350 metres of runway length. If we take about 150 metres off that, it gives us 3,200 metres, and that's what we can expect roughly by the time we actually touch down around the touchdown zone of the runway. We're not going to vacate a Bravo, it's too close to the threshold and also too sharp. Charlies are possible there, look, and if we look further down the runway, it's a bit of a tight one, but if we scrub enough speed off, we'll be able to vacate at Delta, and either way, Charlie or Delta, we'd just go straight across, having vacated, and we'll be looking at parking up at the gates, switching the APU on, so on and so forth, before shutting the engines down when parked. With that in mind, we can think about auto brake, whichever setting we're going to use. On the Airbus, after takeoff, only low or medium are usable. Max is only for takeoffs for those rejected takeoff scenarios. In this instance, we're going to try auto brake medium, and we'll use a little bit of reverse thrust as well, just to see what happens. As is the case most of the time, as we get to about 10,000 feet above ground level, we'll make sure that the seatbelt signs are on and the landing lights are on, so lights and signs as required. As we're flying into Mombasa and it's really hot, icing's not a factor, so we're not going to worry about that, but if you were flying into somewhere really cold, you've got to think about icing as well, and you'd set those as required too. Don't forget, through 10,000 feet the speed limit drops to 250 knots, so we would need to anticipate that. Certainly on vertical speed mode we would need to reduce that almost to level to allow the aeroplane to begin to decelerate. Now if we press down on the speed bug to go into selected speed mode, what we can do is work to achieve that early now, 3,000 above 10,000 feet, and we'll set 245, and we'll go to 2,400 foot per minute, and I'll also bring the speed brake, the ground spoilers, to that halfway position to help now begin decelerating the aeroplane. So it's all about managing the energy on descent. Those of you who are using the throttles through this, you can, but you've got to make sure that the auto thrust is off and your speeds are nice and accurate all the way through this. The Airbus though happily lives in the climb gate on descent, so you don't really need to move it out of that until we are idling the engines for touchdown. So almost at 10,000 feet now, look, speed is dropping below 250. We can use this opportunity as well to just increase our rate of descent a little bit, to make sure we're achieving the altitudes that we want. So 6,000 at or above at Ingal. We'll continue the descent though, so we'll now set 4,000 because that's next. Imgal flight level 60, followed by SPOM flight level 040 at or above. And if we look on the ILS charts here, by the time we establish on the ILS we need to be at 2,200 feet. So we have to think that far ahead in our descent to make sure that we're on profile all the way through. If you're too high, go around, try again. Through 10,000 feet, landing lights, nose to takeoff, runway turn off lights. If you wanted to, you could pop your wing lights on as well, and then seatbelts go on. Through the descent, as we're running out of waypoints on our flight as well, we just bring our range ring in ever so slowly until we're on approach. We'll set 20 or 10 perhaps, personal preference there again. Let's get rid of the ground spoilers, and we can now reduce our rate of descent quite nicely to about 1,500 foot per minute, and that's going to help maintain our speed below 250, and it also means that our rate of descent is going to be nice through Imgal down to SPOM, so on and so forth. And now we'll just continue this bit of work all the way through to establishing on the localizer. One thing to bear in mind through the descent as well, going back to speed management, is making sure that we start to decelerate the aeroplane in good time prior to the approach itself. So you have an option in the MCDU in the performance section of it called Activate Approach Page. It's a little button at the bottom of that screen. We'll show it very shortly. And what that does is it tells the aeroplane now we're going into the approach profile, the approach phase of flight, and therefore we need the speeds relevant to flap extensions, minimum clean speed, and all that sort of thing. So begin to decelerate towards your minimum green speed, the green dot on the primary flight display speed indicator, just before you think about activating the approach phase, and it will then mean that you've slowed down nicely and you're managing the energy through that descent up to the approach phase of flight. So we're about 25 miles to touchdown. At this point we're going to look at activating that approach phase now. So we're at 4,000 feet, and we're going to now look at bringing our speed down towards our green dot. So I'll select 225, go to the performance page, and you see it's already activated the approach phase because we've passed through a little waypoint that said decel. If you go past that and you see down in the approach page here it still says activate approach phase, we'll be on the previous bit on descent, then you can click it and then click again to confirm to enter that phase of flight. But as you can see now, when we go to managed speed, the managed speed is commanding a speed just above that green dot, which is perfect for what we want. Again, we're going to bring our range ring in a little bit, and in fact now it would be really useful for us to just go to 10 miles. And you can see now we've got about 4 miles to SPOM, 4,000 feet, which is what we're already at, really good. And we can think about now our next altitude. We'll press the collar to go to 100-foot intervals. And as we discussed on the charts a short while ago, we want 2,200 feet to establish on that ILS approach. And we want to achieve that just after a 2SU. So if we bring the range ring up again, you can see here, having expanded the range, that we've got about 20 miles to touchdown and 10 miles to be at 3,000 feet. And CI21, which is the start of the ILS, that's where we want to be at 2,200 feet approximately. Between that and FI21, which is final approach, ILS21. So we've got our minimum set. We've already preset the QNH behind standard. And we're going to remain at 4,000 now until we pass a 2SU, and then we're going to begin a nice gentle descent, probably about 900 to 1,000 foot per minute, down to 2,200. The runway is up ahead of us, and we're also within range, so we're going to activate LS mode. And if I share the charts with you again on the screen, we can see, comparing it against the primary flight display, which says MI 110.10 at the very bottom left, we can see here that that matches the charts. That's what we want. It's also giving us a distance to the threshold. So let's go to open descent, and we're going to drop down to about 800 foot per minute, and we're going to go to flaps 1. So I'm going to select flaps 1 now. With the flap extension, it's basically bringing our speed, maximum speed of the aircraft, VNE, down a little bit. And with the extension of flaps and with our profile, we don't need ground spoilers anymore, so we're going to arm those. Make sure your park brakes off. Quick check of the overhead panel, make sure all your lights and signs, everything is set correctly. I would also check your fuel at that point, 14.6 tons left, plenty for what we need. And we can see that the ILS lateral guidance on the bottom of the PFD is active, and we've also got the vertical guidance as well, that diamond on the right hand side of the primary flight display, showing that we are currently, the yellow line, we are currently below the glide slope. So we need to make sure before we establish on an ILS that we're just below the glide slope and that we are working towards the horizontal lateral guidance of the ILS as well. It keeps saying lever asymmetry there. That's because for some reason it's thinking that the levers are in an asymmetrical position, but they're both in the climb gate set correctly, so we disregard that.
2,500.
Check that. We're through transition, so let's go to our local QNH. We've got to press it twice, make sure it says QNH, not QFE. And we can now set 180 knots. For that, we'll set flap 2. And we're also going to activate approach phase. So, locks active and green. That is because we're already on the horizontal guidance nicely. This approach has brought us in nicely on that already. And the glide slope now is about to go active. So, we're at 7 miles already. Let's go to 160 knots. Make sure we've got our VREFs here, so approach speed 145. We'll maintain 160 knots until until 4, dear me. And just to help the aeroplane, and especially because we're about 2,000 feet now, we'll go gear down, flaps 3. You see them extend on the screen there. And now we'll go full flaps, final stage of flaps. Keep an eye on the throttle as well and the speed there. And now we're ready. We go to manage speed, bring that range ring back in again. Make sure that we've set our missed approach altitude on the charts, so 3,000. That's ready. So speed's good, our position on the ILS is good. Make sure we've got LS mode on to get those diamonds there as well. And the QNH is set. Coming up to 1,000 feet. We can see we've got full flaps, landing gears down 3 green, ground spoilers armed, park brake off. 400 foot is our minimums. If it was a Cat 3 auto land approach, you could just leave the aeroplane to do everything itself, but before minimums for this, because it's a Cat 1 ILS, we're going to turn the autopilot off and hand fly it in ourselves. So because visibility is really good, we can just fly a visual approach. If the visibility was pretty poor, we would need to maintain our approach relevant to those diamonds there for the ILS. So basically we would stare at those instruments to help guide us in. Hands on the throttles ready, but we're not moving them out the climb gate yet, we're just maintaining our rate of descent.
200. 100.
And a bit of a crosswind today actually on this.
60.
Here we go.
50.
50 foot over the threshold.
30. 20.
Idle the throttle, hold the flare.
Retard. 5.
Touchdown. And reverse green, work to maintain the centre line, bit tough in crosswind conditions. Reverses are both active and we're on medium auto brake with decel. So tap of the brakes gives us control of those brakes. And we can vacate at Charlie. As we cross the stop bar for the runway, we can turn LS mode off, flight directors off if we want to as well. APU master switch goes on. Wait for 3 seconds. APU start. Landing lights off, nose wheel lights to taxi, runway turn off lights off as we've crossed the line there, and strobe lights can go to either auto or off. Flaps up. Ground spoilers disarmed. and retracted, and then we'll taxi into the terminal. APU bleed needs to go on now that the APU is available. And then we'll just work through taxi, and you guys can park wherever you need to. Hope you found this tutorial useful. Lots of information to cram in. Be sure to practice it and give it a go. Hit like and subscribe and share your thoughts here on the LVFR YouTube channel. Thank you very much for watching and enjoy your flights. Take care.